Welcome back. I hope everyone had a wonderful summer break. Following in Kristen's footsteps is going to be tough, but I'm really excited to work with you all, and I know that we will continue to find successes as a department. I am asking you to watch this data overview in flipped lesson format so that we can be efficient with our time this week. In an effort to keep things streamlined, I will be meeting with PLCs on Thursday, August 6th, so that we can make some decisions about initiatives for the year and begin digging further into the data. I would like facilitators to let me know what time works best for all teachers in the PLC and what room you will be meeting in. Our first department meeting will be at 8 a.m. in room 702 on Thursday, August 19th. So you might be wondering how we are going to look at data when the results from milestones are not in yet. Well, we're actually going to look at the data from the last 3 years of the CRCT to inform our planning right now. Later, once we have the milestones results, we can compare the two. The purpose of this data overview is to discover strengths and weaknesses in student learning to guide unit planning. I really want us to celebrate our strengths. We are doing so many things right, but we need to investigate how we can help all students. We will look at some big picture data that comes from the state and district and how it compares to NMS. We will also look at our scores to search for trends. The last thing I would like to offer are some questions for each PLC to consider as you begin planning for this next year. So let's get this data party started. In looking at the demographics of Georgia, over 750,000 students were enrolled in the 2013-14 school year. We can see that black and white students each represent about 40% of the state's student population. The remaining 20% of the student population combines all other demographic groupings. When we look at the demographics of Fulton County, we see that black and white students make up the majority of the student population here as well, with black students representing 45% of the population in 2013-14 school year. When we look at NMS, the student population is quite different. We can see 70% of the total student population is white, and while other demographic groups are present, the percentages of Black, Asian Pacific Islander, and Hispanic students are all close to each other, representing 10%, 9%, and 8% respectively. For NMS, the demographics are less diverse. This is quite different than what we saw in the data presented from the state and district. Now let's take a look at total enrollment for NMS. A steady increase in student enrollment can be seen over the last 3 years. The redistricting of school lines recently may lead to changes in enrollment for the current school year. As mentioned earlier, the majority of the student population is white. However, in looking at this line graph, we are able to see subtle changes. The numbers of white and multiracial students are decreasing while all other populations are increasing. Because the lines on the previous graph representing Asian, Black, and Hispanic students were all very close, I thought a chart might help with seeing these trends too. The largest increase in a demographic group between 2011 and 2014 was seen among the Asian Pacific Islander group. Next, let's look at the subgroup populations of NMS. These populations include low SES students, English language learners or ELL students, and SWD or students with disabilities. Though the numbers of ELL and SWD students decreased slightly between the 2011-12 and 2012-13 school years, all groups saw an increase the following year. When comparing demographics, the state and district are more diverse than Northwestern Middle School. Total enrollment at Northwestern is increasing each year. Over the last 3 years, the white population has decreased, while most other populations of race ethnicities have increased. All subgroup populations increased steadily between the 2012-13 and 2013-14 school years. Now let's take a look at our scores. At the state and district levels, the percentage of students scoring at or above proficiency is very even. However, comparing NMS CRCT performance to the district and state, we see that our school has a higher percentage of students scoring at or above proficiency across all content areas. In fact, over 90% of our students are at or above proficiency in all content areas. This is truly something to celebrate. All right, let's dig into the science data. To look at overall performance on the science CRCT over the last 3 years, we have this graph that represents students not meeting proficiency. NMS has less than 7% of the total population that did not meet, which is far less than state and district averages. The percentages here are low for NMS, which is a strength for our students and teaching staff. But that means that more of our students are meeting or exceeding on the test. In the 2012-13 school year, the percentages of students at NMS meeting on the 6th through 8th grade CRCT in science dropped by half a percentage point but rebounded to 39.9% the following year. From 2011 to 2014, more than 50% of NMS students exceeded on the science portion of the CRCT. However, it can also be seen that there is a slight but steady decline in the percentage of students exceeding over this 3-year span of time at our school, from 56.9% to 56.1% to 55.4%. When looking at our performance from year to year, an important trend emerges. There may be slight fluctuations, but the percentage of students scoring in each range are stagnant. So let's break down science to see how each grade level performed. Each bar in the graph represents all of the students at a particular grade level. The colors demonstrate the percentages of students in the different scoring categories. Unlike language arts and math, science content varies significantly across middle school, which many say is like comparing apples and oranges. However, the data indicates that each grade level has room for improvement in helping students move from meeting to exceeding with science content. Further disaggregation of this data by strand or domain will be helpful for adjusting our teaching practices to meet the needs of students. If we know our students are struggling with a particular standard or element, we need to research and find new strategies to help us. At this point, it might be important to take a look at our subgroups to see which groups of students are struggling the most. First, let's look at students with disabilities. Over the last 3 years, close to 70% or more students in this subgroup have met or exceeded on the science CRCT in 6th through 8th grade, while 30% did not meet. This is a much higher percentage of students not meeting on the CRCT in science than in the rest of the student population. At NMS, our ELL population is small, but has grown over the last few years to 17 students. 41.2% of our ELL students did not meet on the science CRCT in 2013-14. Again, this is a much higher percentage not meeting than the rest of our student population. How can we better meet the needs of these students? For the low SES subgroup, the most consistent data can be seen in the percentages of students scoring in the exceeds range over the last 3 years. The percentage of students from the low SES subgroup that met proficiency decreased between 2011-12 and 2012-13 by 15.7 percentage points. In 2013-14, a rebound of 8.6 percentage points was seen. Though 74% or more of the students in this subgroup are at or above proficiency, as much as 25% did not meet at some point over the last 3 years. This is a large gap not seen with the rest of the student population. The percentage of students at NMS scoring at or above proficiency is higher than the state and district. The data indicates that each grade level has room for improvement in helping students move from meeting to exceeding with science content. Achievement gaps exist in our subgroups. Over the last 3 years, around 30% of students with disabilities at NMS did not meet on the Science CRCT each year. 41.2% of our ELL students did not meet on the CRCT in 2013-14. As much as 25% of the low SES subgroup did not meet over the last 3 years. Please consider these questions carefully as a PLC as you begin planning. One of our goals is bridging these achievement gaps. We will revisit these questions again in our first few meetings. How do we move students from does not meet to meets, and especially from meets to exceeds? What strategies can we use to close the achievement gaps for subgroups? What is working well? What is not working? Are there certain standards that students struggle with? What type of professional development could assist your PLC with this standard? I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this data overview. Thank you so much.